The passage of time often brings unexpected reunions, and sometimes it leads us back to familiar faces from our past. It was during one of those serendipitous moments that I found myself reconnecting with Gabriella, the sister of an old friend. Memories flooded back as I remembered her youthful spirit, and I couldn't help but marvel at how life had evolved for both of us. Now, years later, I was intrigued to discover the woman she had become. As I navigated the complexities of life after divorce, I sensed an opportunity not just for friendship, but perhaps for something more profound. Little did I know that this journey would lead me down a path filled with warmth, laughter, and the promise of new beginnings. I've never considered myself a vindictive person. Instead, I firmly believe in justice, an ideal that often feels out of reach in our imperfect world. Yet even amid the unfairness that pervades life, I hold on to the hope that justice can be restored. My wife, Gretchen, betrayed me deeply, living a double life while I remained oblivious. You could say she retired from her deceitful ways, banking on the idea that I would never uncover the truth. My name is Dirk Vanvet, and I share my life with Gretchen. We are both 42 years old, tall and slender, with striking blonde hair and blue eyes, a reflection of our Dutch heritage. While I can't speak for our friends from diverse backgrounds, I suspect our Caucasian friends would rate us an 8 out of 10 on the attractiveness scale. Together, we have 3 children: Jurgen, our 18-year-old son, Finn, who is 14, and Tess, our 16-year-old daughter. They all carry our traits, tall, blonde, and blue-eyed, and are a tremendous source of joy for both of us. Gretchen and I have always enjoyed a comfortable marriage. We get along well, rarely argue, and share similar political views, parenting philosophies, and values. We firmly believe in setting clear rules for our children, enforcing them consistently, while still showering them with love and support. This balanced approach has yielded well-adjusted children who are compassionate yet determined and ambitious. Gretchen thrives as a successful commercial real estate agent, while I oversee quality control as an engineering manager for a company that has grown from a startup to a large multinational corporation. Financially, we are stable, living in a pleasant home in a northern Virginia suburb of Washington, D.C. Our intimate life, particularly mine with Gretchen, has been satisfactory. We maintain a rhythm of intimacy, averaging twice a week, and this frequency increases during vacations or when the kids are away. Unlike my previous experiences, our connection has been more about expressing love than mere physical gratification. Before meeting Gretchen at age 22, I actively pursued romantic relationships. We married swiftly, just 18 months after our first meeting. My longest relationship before Gretchen was with Gina Martinelli, a stark contrast to my current wife. Gina was a petite, fiery Italian woman who weighed no more than 100 pounds. I towered over her, and our differences ran deeper than just physical appearance. Gina was a newly divorced 29-year-old with 2 young children, her temperament energetic and vibrant, unlike the composed nature of Gretchen and myself. Our connection began under unconventional circumstances. I accidentally collided with her car in a mall parking lot just after my final exams. Understandably furious about the damage to her vehicle, Gina could have reacted more harshly if not for her children's presence. However, by taking responsibility, providing my contact information, and ensuring she got home safely, I managed to defuse the situation. During the drive, I found myself captivated by her presence. She noticed my lingering gaze and smiled. In just 3 days, we had formed a close bond, and 2 weeks later, I moved into her modest summer house, telling my parents I'd found a better job. Gina was a whirlwind of charm, intelligence, and passion. Our intimacy was unparalleled, characterized by an insatiable appetite for each other. We made love daily, often multiple times, regardless of circumstances, even during her more challenging moments. Our relationship, while passionate, lacked the foundation for marriage, hampered by age differences and her family ties. Fast forward to the present. I found myself in the lobby of the W Hotel in Washington, D.C., on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon in May. A last-minute request from a valued customer staying at the hotel drew me there. Imagine my shock when, while at the front desk, I spotted Gretchen exiting the elevator, arm in arm with a man who looked strikingly familiar. A man of similar height and age, with brown hair and eyes. Gretchen seemed completely absorbed in her companion, blissfully unaware of her surroundings. As I discreetly arranged for the front desk to call my customer, my heart raced. This was a moment I never expected, a moment that would shatter the comfortable life I thought I knew. The confrontation that loomed ahead would change everything, unveiling layers of deception that had been hidden in plain sight. My journey toward reclaiming justice and truth had just begun, and I was ready to confront the reality that awaited me. From the corner of the room, I covertly observed Gretchen and her friend. Their parting kiss was jarring, an unpleasant sight that stirred emotions deep within me. Normally, I prided myself on my self-control, but in that moment, I felt a surge of rage, intense and raw, almost primal, like a wild animal trapped inside. It took every ounce of my willpower to keep from confronting them. Thankfully, just as I was about to lose my composure, the sound of my client's name brought me back to reality. As Jack exited the elevator, I narrowly avoided bumping into Gretchen's companion. "Everything okay, Dirk?" Jack asked, raising an eyebrow. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Oh, my apologies, Jack," I replied, forcing a smile. "I thought I spotted an old adversary from college, someone I never quite got even with. It stirred up some intense feelings, but it turns out it wasn't him. I'll be back to my usual composed self in a moment." Jack chuckled, and we shifted gears into some small talk as we walked toward the coffee shop to discuss business. I did my best to focus on Jack's concerns, but the encounter haunted me. An hour later, on my way back to the office, I found myself distracted, nearly involved in several near misses on the road. The memories of what I had witnessed clung to me like a shadow. When I finally returned to my office, I had only one business matter to attend to, which allowed me some time for contemplation. I wasn't the type to act impulsively, especially in such an emotionally charged situation. As the clock struck 6:01 p.m., and I prepared to leave and pick up my daughter Tessa from her high school tennis practice, I realized I needed more time to sort through my thoughts, so I decided to take a business trip for a while. Tessa's warm greeting, filled with her usual bubbly charm, momentarily lifted my spirits as we drove home. She eagerly recounted the highlights of her day, and I couldn't help but feel a wave of gratitude wash over me. It reminded me of the importance of maintaining daily contact with my children. I could never settle for being the kind of father who only sees his kids on weekends. However, as I returned home, I noticed the suspicious glances Gretchen shot my way. She likely sensed I was grappling with something significant. Fortunately, the lively dinner conversation with the kids helped alleviate her suspicions, allowing me to calm my own nerves. By bedtime, everything seemed normal, almost peaceful. Thankfully, Gretchen didn't initiate any intimacy that night, sparing me from further emotional turmoil. The following morning, I called Gretchen to inform her of my sudden trip out of town. "I'll swing by home for some essentials," I assured her, "and I'll call you and the kids later." Wednesday and Thursday evenings were spent in one of our company-owned apartments in Arlington, Virginia, where I maintained my nightly routine of calling Gretchen and the kids for an hour. By midday Friday, the day I was supposed to return, I had a plan in motion. Although I engaged in some legitimate work activities from Wednesday to Friday, my primary focus was researching potential solutions to my predicament. This meant consulting with family and tax attorneys, meeting private investigators, and even speaking with a psychologist. My first investigator left much to be desired, and I found myself visiting a medical testing laboratory and a pharmacist with dubious ethics. I also met with an international banker and conducted extensive internet research on a wide spectrum of topics. The main conclusion I reached was that I needed to endure my marriage until our 14-year-old son, Finn, left for college. One aspect that somewhat eased the situation was Gretchen's newfound fondness for sherry. She often indulged in a cordial drink after dinner or before bed, especially on weekends. Over the next 4 years before Finn's departure for college, my primary objectives crystallized. Save money discreetly, obtain a private investigator's report, conduct DNA tests on my children, prepay their college tuition, collaborate with the disgraced pharmacist to develop a special compound, and meticulously prepare for an eventual divorce. This preparation even extended to persuading Gretchen to agree to file separate income tax returns starting in the next tax period, citing advice from our tax counsel due to changes in my business. Clearing my mind of unpleasant thoughts, I managed to participate in relatively normal interactions with Gretchen over the next month. During this time, I was anxiously waiting for the report from the private investigator, the results of the DNA analysis, and clarification from the pharmacist. I deliberately delayed receiving this information for at least a month, fearing that once I had it, I wouldn't be able to maintain the facade of normalcy in my relationship with Gretchen, a facade I desperately needed. When it came to DNA testing, I was confident that the man I saw Gretchen with couldn't possibly be the father of any of my children. He had brown eyes and hair, stood no taller than Gretchen, and none of my kids bore any resemblance to him. In truth, all three children strikingly resembled both Gretchen and me, so I didn't anticipate any negative results from the DNA test. Still, I felt the need for confirmation. What I dreaded discovering was whether any of the kids were biologically mine while others were not. Therefore, I approached the DNA testing in an unconventional manner. I intentionally mixed up the labels of the 3 vials containing the children's DNA swabs so that I wouldn't know which belonged to whom when I sent them to the lab. My own DNA sample was marked as Sample 1. When I contacted the lab, I simply asked if the person in Sample 1 was related to those in the other 3 vials, and if so, what that meant for our family. As I sat in my office, the anticipation was almost palpable. I had made it clear to the lab that they should not disclose the genders of the individuals linked to the unlabeled vials in their report. Thankfully, this strategy proved effective. About a month later, just as I was expecting the results, the head technician, Tom, called me. By that point, we had developed a comfortable rapport, so I felt at ease. "Dirk, I have the DNA test results," he announced, his tone filled with professionalism. "Great. Right on time. Give me the summary and any comments you might have, Tom," I replied, my heart racing slightly with anticipation. Of course. We labeled the 3 unlabeled vials as A, B, and C for reference, per your instructions. We did not record the genders of those individuals, as you requested. The results indicate that individuals corresponding to vials A and C are strongly biologically related to the person in vial number 1. Since we determined that the individual in vial number 1 is male, it's highly likely he is the father of the individuals in vials A and C, Tom explained. I swallowed hard, the implications hitting me. "And what about vial B?" I asked cautiously. "Well, the individual in vial B shares several alleles with the person in vial number 1, and there is a biological connection to those in vials A and C. However, there's no familial relationship between the individual in vial B and the person in vial number 1, Tom clarified. A wave of relief washed over me. "What does not closely related mean?" I stuttered. "It means that the person represented by vial B couldn't be a parent, grandparent, child, grandchild, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, or even a first cousin of the person in vial number 1. In fact, it's most likely they're not even second cousins," he elaborated. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. My father, brother, and one cousin all bore a strong resemblance to me, so it was a relief to know that the situation wasn't as dire as I had feared. "What's the likelihood that either of the parents linked to the individual in vial B had brown hair and brown eyes?" I pressed further. Tom chuckled lightly. "The probability stands at around 1%. "Thanks, Tom. I expect the report to be sent to my business address without any gender-specific details regarding the subjects in vials A and C," I instructed. "You got it. Also, the cash you provided for the testing is more than enough. In fact, we can refund you $50, Tom responded. "Keep the $50 as a token of my appreciation," I said, managing a chuckle, though my mood was far from joyful. I was now acutely aware that one of my children wasn't biologically mine, but likely had a father with blonde hair and blue eyes. I chose to remain blissfully unaware of which child it was. I didn't want to treat any of them differently after 14 years of knowing them. The results also revealed something else unsettling. Besides the man I had seen Gretchen with, She had been involved in at least one other affair with the biological father of one of my children. The DNA lab findings made some of the private investigators' information redundant, but not entirely. As anticipated, Judy James, the supervising private investigator on my case, had uncovered the specifics of Gretchen's ongoing affair. She conducted herself with utmost professionalism, delivering an oral briefing before providing me with a comprehensive dossier. "The individual in question is Winston Tangren," she began, her voice steady. "He's 41 years old, lives in New Jersey, and has been married for 20 years. He has two 15-year-old fraternal twin daughters and works in commercial real estate. That's where he crossed paths with your wife." I listened intently as Judy continued. "Over the past month of surveillance, they met in hotel rooms twice, once at the Hilton in Rockville, Maryland, and again in Springfield, Virginia. On both occasions, they spent about 2 hours together, displaying affectionate behavior and exchanging passionate farewells as they exited. The Rockville encounter took place on a Tuesday between noon and 2 p.m., while the Springfield rendezvous happened on a Wednesday between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock p.m. They arrived and left separately." "Have you managed to gather any intel on how long this affair has been going on?" I inquired, hoping for clarity. "We can't confirm that exactly, but we do know they met almost exactly a year ago. One informant, the only person we found who suspects something, speculates it's been going on for about 6 months," Judy replied. I nodded sadly, the weight of her words settling in. "Is there anything else I should know?" "There's one aspect of our written report that is significantly understated for reasons I can't delve into," she said, a hint of a smile on her lips. "If pressed, I'll deny ever mentioning it." I leaned in, eager to hear more. "Go on." "In the report, we suggest that an operative may have discovered that Gretchen possesses a second cell phone, which she uses to communicate with Tangren and possibly others. However, the suggestion that it may be true is a considerable understatement," she revealed, catching my full attention. I simply nodded, absorbing the gravity of her information. "I could provide more details, but everything is documented in the dossier and there are photos included as well." "Is there anything else you need?" Judy asked. "No, that covers it. Do I owe anything beyond the retainer?" I asked. $300 under budget," she replied, handing me the bill. "You're quite precise, aren't you?" I chuckled as I handed her 3 $100 bills. "Treat yourself to a cup of coffee with the extra 100. "Thank you, generous Samaritan," she smiled, her eyes sparkling with appreciation. As I prepared to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in my gut. The knowledge of my children's origins weighed heavily on me, and the intricate web of infidelity and deceit had only begun to unravel. As I navigated the complexities of my clandestine dealings, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living a double life. With the help of a discreet and disposable phone, I communicated only with the essential parties involved in my plans. Excluding our initial meeting and one subsequent visit, my arrangement with the pharmacist revolved around creating a drug that would seamlessly integrate into Sherry, significantly enhancing sexual arousal in the user, while fading away completely within 8 hours, leaving no lasting negative effects. Despite his questionable reputation, the pharmacist exhibited remarkable expertise in chemistry, evident in the dedication he poured into this project. "Mr. Sun, what progress have you made?" I inquired, eager to hear about the developments. "I've developed 4 potential compounds," he replied confidently. "You'll need to conduct experiments to determine which one is the most effective. Once you do, I can produce larger quantities." "Excellent. Could you elaborate on each of them?" I asked, leaning forward in anticipation. "The first compound, which I've named Alpha, is primarily derived from the Muna bean. It has elevated levels of LOPA, which stimulates dopamine production in the body and acts as a potent aphrodisiac for women," he explained, his eyes glinting with enthusiasm. "How should I administer it, and what dosage do you recommend?" I queried. Mr. Sun produced a small amber bottle equipped with an eyedropper. "Just 2 drops, 3 at most. Add it directly to the glass before pouring in the sherry. Give it a light stir with a metal spoon and you're set. It should begin to take effect in about 30 minutes, reaching its full potential in 45. The effects will last for a couple of hours," he explained. All right, I acknowledge that. What about the other compounds? I pressed. Mr. Sun went on to detail the 3 other compounds he had developed. Although they had their merits, none seemed as promising as alpha, and each came with potential side effects that he tried to downplay. He repeatedly assured me that alpha was safe and devoid of adverse reactions. After his presentation, I settled my remaining debt with him in cash. I then inquired about the cost of my next purchase of alpha. How much would I need to last me 4.5 years? A liter, he replied without hesitation. Will it degrade over time? Absolutely not. The ingredients and carrier are very stable. Just shake the container every week or so and you'll be fine, he assured me. I asked, if I buy a liter next time we meet, how much will that cost? $5,000, he answered promptly. After we shook hands, I left feeling a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The effectiveness of the alpha compound was so remarkable that I never felt the need to explore any other options. One Saturday evening, after returning from a party, I offered Gretchen a glass of sherry, which she accepted eagerly. I added 2 drops of alpha to her drink, pretending to enjoy my own glass as well. After we both took our showers and prepared for bed, I noticed a shift in her demeanor. Our interaction transformed into something more primal, devoid of tenderness and filled with an uninhibited passion that was new for us. I continued to buy liters of alpha from Mr. Sun, and 6 months after introducing it into our routine, I observed a significant change in Gretchen's behavior in bed. She became more adventurous, open to exploring new experiences, and overall, she seemed much more satisfied. During this chaotic period, I stumbled upon a secret mobile phone hidden in her desk drawer. With a sense of stealth, I discreetly installed a tracking device to monitor her SMS and recorded messages on my work computer. This move provided me insight into her rendezvous with Winston Tangren, which occurred roughly every 2 weeks. On the nights leading up to her meetings with him, I consistently slipped alpha into her drinks, dismissing any protests she made about engaging in risky behavior. About 3 months later, I managed to uncover the schedule of her encounters with Tangren, and I executed my strategy. I kept the alpha coming until she ceased communication with him altogether. I assumed this marked the end of their affair, but it didn't alter my future plans. Surprisingly, her behavior toward me became even more enthusiastic, leading to an intense physical connection that lacked any emotional intimacy. For over 4 years, I maintained a facade of cohabitation, navigating life with someone with whom my communication was purely physical. I convinced Gretchen to file separate tax returns for the past few years and urged her to prepare for our children's college tuition, despite our temporary financial struggles. I discreetly transferred bonuses and salary increases to an offshore bank account, all while keeping my taxes paid in the U.S. I managed to stash away over $100,000 in cash, fabricating substantial gambling losses during my annual trips to Las Vegas for conferences, moving that money into the offshore account as well. During this tumultuous time, the thought of establishing the paternity of my 3 children never crossed my mind. I enjoyed great relationships with all of them, perhaps even a closer bond with Tess than with the boys. Tess often came to me for advice on various matters, sometimes preferring my counsel over Gretchen's, which seemed to annoy her a little. Then came the day I had both anticipated and dreaded. Finn was heading off to college. It had been about 4.5 years since I discovered Gretchen's affair and learned that one of my children had a different biological father. We rented the largest SUV available, stripped it down to just 3 seats, and loaded up Finn's belongings for the journey. I promised him his own car in his junior year if he maintained a B average or better during his sophomore year. The same deal I had made with Jurgen and Tess, both of whom had kept their end of the bargain. Finn was enrolled at James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, roughly a 2.5-hour drive from our home in Northern Virginia. The university was known for its excellent business management program, which perfectly aligned with Finn's aspirations. The night before our departure, I made sure that Gretchen and I had one last night together. The next morning, I was acutely aware that this would be our final intimate moment. We dropped Finn off at his dorm around 5 p.m., eager to leave as he had already captured the attention of two attractive girls from the neighboring dorm. Our destination was Northern Virginia, and I made a phone call to ensure that all the belongings I wanted from our house were ready for retrieval. As I embarked on this new chapter, I couldn't help but reflect on the choices I had made and the intricate web of secrets that had become my life. Over the past 2 weeks, I had carefully moved my belongings to my new condo, conveniently located just 2 blocks from my office. As I settled in, I texted the process server to confirm our meeting at the first Woodstock exit on Route 81. We agreed to meet within 45 minutes, under the guise of a gas station and restroom break. As I pulled into the station, I quickly scanned the area for the process server while Gretchen headed to the ladies' room. To my surprise, the server was already there, having texted me his location just 20 yards away. We made our connection discreetly, and I gestured toward Gretchen as she entered the travel center. The server nodded, and I returned to my SUV, driving off before Gretchen could rejoin me. At the next exit, I stopped for gas and another bathroom break, intentionally ignoring the incessant calls from Gretchen, each ring punctuated by her distinct ringtone. Finally, I made my way back to the condo, relishing a peaceful night's sleep on both Saturday and Sunday. By Monday morning, it became painfully clear that describing Gretchen's anger as anything less than explosive would be an understatement. I knew I had to speak with her sooner or later, so when she stormed into my office, I braced myself. As soon as I answered the call, she unleashed a tirade, her voice laced with fury. "Dirk, how could you leave me stranded 90 miles from home and serve me divorce papers through a process server? What's wrong with you?" she screamed. I cut her off abruptly. "If you raise your voice, I'll hang up. We can discuss this calmly, but you need to control your anger." Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "Despicable. Just despicable." "My issue is with a wife who betrayed me," I replied coolly. "If you'd like, we can meet tomorrow to discuss this further." She seemed taken aback by my calmness, pausing before responding. "I never—" "Gretchen, stop deceiving me as you have for the past 19 years. Let's talk tomorrow. I suggest your office conference room at 6 p.m. "Why can't we just talk at home?" she shot back. "Your house?" I replied, my tone clipped. "Apologies, but that place holds unpleasant memories for me, living with a cheating partner and all. If we're talking, it'll be at your office conference room. Just text me the details." I ended the call, leaving her to stew in her anger. On Tuesday at exactly 6 p.m., I walked into conference room B in Gretchen's office. To my surprise, a sharply dressed man sat beside her. I glanced at him, my irritation boiling over. "Who the hell are you and why are you here?" "Can we begin without the profanity?" Gretchen requested, her voice steady despite the tension. "Sure, but you need to explain who this guy is and why he's here." "My name is Dr. John Bello, and I'm a marriage counselor," he said, standing and extending his hand. I didn't shake it. "Fine, Dr. Bello. If Gretchen wants you here, that's her choice. But I expect you to sign a confidentiality agreement," I stated, taking my seat across from them. "That's unnecessary," he replied, sounding a bit defensive. "It goes against the ethics of my profession." "Sorry, but it's either you sign the agreement or I leave," I snapped. "I don't have—" he began. "Then I'll leave," I interrupted. "In my line of work, confidentiality agreements are standard practice. I carry 2 versions in my briefcase at all times." With that, I pulled out a standard confidentiality agreement, made some quick revisions, and handed it over. "Take a look at this. Once you sign it, Gretchen and I will do the same, and then my son can make copies for us." I noticed Gretchen's irritation rising, but she managed to maintain her composure as both she and Dr. Bello reviewed the document. "This doesn't seem too burdensome," Bello commented as he signed it and passed it to Gretchen. She followed suit, and I did the same. "Thanks," I said, placing the document back in my briefcase. "Now, what did you want to discuss, Gretchen? I thought everything was spelled out clearly in the divorce papers you served." "Firstly, I expect an apology for calling me a cheater over the phone," she shot back, her arms crossed defiantly. Okay, I apologize, I replied, catching her off guard. Even though you've been unfaithful and might fit the definition of promiscuous, there was no excuse for my choice of words. In the future, if I need to refer to you indirectly, I'll use the term unfaithful spouse. How does that sound? Both Bello and Gretchen shot me disapproving looks, but I remained polite. Then Gretchen asked, "If you suspect me of infidelity, why didn't you file for adultery?" The first reason is that I continued to live with you for over 4 years after the alleged infidelity, which means a Virginia court won't grant a divorce on those grounds, I explained. There may be more recent affairs I'm unaware of, but I'd prefer not to change the grounds for divorce. And the second reason? Bello inquired, keenly interested. I don't want our family and friends, especially Jurgen, Tess, and Finn, to be exposed to information about your affairs, I replied firmly. Did you rush into filing, though? You haven't met Virginia's standard for a no-fault divorce, Bello interjected. Technically, yes, I acknowledged. But my lawyer assures me that by stating I established a separate residence as of the filing date, which was Saturday, the court will overlook that technicality, Bello continued. What evidence do you have for your accusations of infidelity? I opened an envelope from my briefcase, revealing photographs of Gretchen and her lover, Tangren, kissing passionately. Alongside those were images of them leaving hotel rooms, text messages, and a summary of the private investigator's findings. As they perused the contents, I casually added, "Oh, by the way, Gretchen, just so you're not caught off guard, the full copy of what I just gave you was personally delivered to Melissa Tangren today." Gretchen shot me a look that spoke volumes, a mixture of disbelief and rage swirling in her expression. This confrontation was only the beginning of a long journey toward truth, justice, and the unraveling of our shared past. A mix of surprise and anger crossed Gretchen's face as she returned her focus to the evidence laid out before us. The materials in my envelope had noticeably deflated, but Dr. Bello insisted. It's clear you've forgiven Gretchen. After all, you've been living together for over 4 years, and she hasn't seen Tangren in more than 3. As Gretchen put it, you've grown closer during this time. That's where you're mistaken, Doc, I replied, a grin creeping onto my face despite the tension in the room. I haven't had a loving relationship with her since I caught her kissing and fooling around with Tangren at the W Hotel in Washington over 4 years ago. My revelation landed like a bombshell, causing a shocked expression to settle on Gretchen's face, her brows furrowing in disbelief. I continued, my tone shifting as I added, "Since then, I've been involved with someone else, but it's been purely physical. I never made love to Gretchen again." At this, tears welled up in Gretchen's eyes. She abruptly stood up and left the room, prompting Dr. Bello to urge me not to leave as he hurried after her. I waited for what felt like an eternity, 15 minutes passing before they returned. Gretchen sat down, her eyes swollen and red from crying. "I've loved you throughout our marriage. Why can't you forgive me?" she implored, her voice trembling. "Tangren was a terrible mistake, and I swear I'll never be involved with anyone else again." I couldn't help but feel a wave of anger rise within me. "The problem is," I retorted, "there's at least one other affair I know of that happened nearly 19 years ago. I don't know when it began or ended, but that's the one that really bothers me." Gretchen sniffled, looking utterly confused. I hadn't planned on revealing that I knew one of our children wasn't mine. Perhaps she wasn't even aware of it despite her infidelity. But the look in her eyes made it clear that things could turn ugly and costly unless she grasped my deep disgust for her actions. Suddenly, an idea struck me. "All right, here's the deal," I said, my tone firm. "We'll amend our confidentiality agreement. If you, Gretchen, ever disclose what I'm about to tell you, with Dr. Bello as our witness, you'll owe me $1 million. Agreed?" She exchanged whispers with Bello for a moment before reluctantly nodding. I retrieved the original agreement and added a new paragraph. Both Gretchen and Bello signed and dated the document beneath the added clause, and I did the same. Gretchen made copies for herself and Dr. Bello, returning the original to me. "All right, spill the beans," she demanded, arms crossed defiantly. "Simply put, one of our children, Jurgen, Tessa, or Finn, is not biologically related to me. I stated solemnly. I've deliberately chosen not to know which one to prevent any subconscious bias in how I treat them, but I am certain of this fact. Gretchen fell silent, visibly taken aback. Unless she was a phenomenal actress, she was genuinely shocked by the news about our child's parentage. Dr. Bello had to speak for her. "How can you be sure?" he asked, his brow furrowed. "Through DNA testing," I replied, handing them another folder from my briefcase. "You may examine this for the next 15 minutes, but you can't make any copies, and I won't provide you with one either." I explained how I structured the test so that I wouldn't know which vials corresponded to each child. As Gretchen and Dr. Bello reviewed the report, I watched her expression grow increasingly despondent. After about 10 minutes, they finished reading. I took the DNA file back and continued, "Gretchen, you now understand why reconciliation is futile, why I left you in Woodstock out of sheer frustration, and why you must sign the separation agreement attached to the divorce papers to end our marriage pretense in a year." As I turned to leave, I heard Gretchen sobbing behind me, unsure if her tears were directed at Bello or me. "Our marriage isn't a pretense," she murmured. But I closed the door, hearing nothing more as I felt defeated. Reluctantly, she signed the papers, but this was just the beginning. Despite my efforts to remain positive, the kids were understandably upset. I assured them that Gretchen and I would maintain a friendly relationship and even celebrate holidays together. About 2 months later, I had an unexpected encounter with Winston Tangren. Clearly intoxicated, he barged into my office, ignoring my secretary's objections. "You've ruined my life by sending something to my wife and talking to Melissa on the phone," he accused, his voice slurred and aggressive. Seizing the moment, I confronted him physically. I delivered one punch and one kick, ensuring my response was proportionate given my significant physical advantage. Winston suffered serious injuries, but thankfully, my secretary's statement, security footage, and a doctor's assessment confirmed the limited extent of the altercation, leaving me with no legal consequences. Meanwhile, Gretchen was oblivious to the fact that her family had attempted an intervention with me, even offering to mediate. To my surprise, her father, Hans, a proud Dutchman, had agreed to participate, even though I had a good relationship with him. It seemed Elle and Julio were determined to salvage the marriage, leaving Hans with little choice but to join them. To my astonishment, Julia's husband Stan also attended, although they didn't bother to give me a courtesy call before arriving at my condo. I welcomed them politely, offering beverages and cookies. I had always held a favorable opinion of Hans, Elle, and Julia, but not so much of Stan, and I saw no reason to be impolite unless things escalated. The conversation unfolded predictably. Despite attempts to maintain cordiality, tears were shed by Elle and Julia, while Hans expressed his displeasure respectfully. At that moment, I still had no idea who the biological father of one of my children might be. Looking at their features, I couldn't pinpoint anyone from our past as a likely candidate. The tension in the room was palpable, especially when Stan made a rude comment accompanied by a sarcastic smirk. In that moment, a realization struck me. Stan and Julia had lived within a 20-foot radius of us about a year before Jurgen was born and up until shortly before Finn's arrival. After that, they moved hundreds of miles away. During that time, Gretchen's relationship with Julio had been intricate and competitive, but it became far less complex and devoid of rivalry after Stan and Julia relocated. Despite this shift, Gretchen seemed entirely unfazed by Stan's presence. I never witnessed any affectionate gestures or meaningful glances exchanged between them. However, knowing what I did about Gretchen, it wasn't hard to imagine that she might have engaged with Stan in a kind of competitive bid to one-up her sister back when Stan and Julia lived nearby. Back then, Stan had a different appearance. He sported blonde hair, stood just a couple of inches shorter than me, and had striking blue eyes. Although he later became overweight and hunched, with premature graying hair, he wasn't unattractive at that time. While his features may not have had the refinement of Gretchen's or mine, he was reasonably good-looking and a competent athlete. I momentarily lost myself in these thoughts, but quickly refocused on my interactions with Julia and Hans, treating them with extra kindness. By the time they left nearly 2 hours later, it was clear to them that there was no chance of Gretchen and me reconciling. I assured them that I would always cherish our relationship, minus Stan, and hoped we could continue to celebrate birthdays and holidays together as we had in the past. I wasn't entirely honest when I claimed I held no ill will toward Gretchen. I refrained from bringing up her infidelities as the root cause of our breakup, and I knew she didn't either. The truth was, the spark had simply faded, and I felt too young to live without love. In our final negotiations before the divorce was finalized, Gretchen and I faced one last contentious issue. It mattered more to her than to me, and I felt I had already been quite accommodating. Eventually, I proposed a deal to settle the matter. If she honestly answered one question, I would concede the point to her and we could move on. She agreed, and we dismissed our attorneys for a moment of privacy. "Gretchen, have you ever been romantically involved with your brother-in-law, Stan?" I asked, watching her expression and body language closely. I was almost certain the answer was yes. While she vehemently denied it, I barely registered her actual response. I felt a strange satisfaction regardless of her words. Thanking her for her answer and apologizing for the question, I instructed our attorneys to concede the point to her, even extending an invitation to lunch. I knew she had a building showing soon after, but I wanted to reassure her that I accepted her verbal denial. She politely declined, saying, "Maybe some other time," to which I insincerely replied, "Sure, consider it a rain check." I was convinced Stan would pay off his debt, but I didn't want Julia to suffer. My revenge, then, had to be physical, not emotional or financial. About a year later, a significant opportunity presented itself. I discovered that Stan was the biological father of one of my children. Finn informed me that Stan planned to go fishing near the conference I could easily attend. Taking my most trusted accomplice, we disguised ourselves, rented a car, and I drove solo to Stan's camp under the cover of night. What happened next was swift and decisive. I subdued Stan, taping his mouth shut before attacking him without warning. I inflicted serious injuries, leaving him exposed to fire ants while whispering, "You shouldn't have betrayed married women." Then, without a trace, I vanished into the night. In subsequent encounters, Stan recognized me but never mentioned what had happened. 3 years after my divorce was finalized, life had settled into a routine as best as could be expected. Gretchen, her family, and mine shared moments like attending Jurgen's and Tess's college graduations, being congenial at Jurgen's wedding, and throwing a big celebration for Tess's 21st birthday. Gretchen also remained quiet about the DNA situation concerning our children. With my scores settled with both Tangren and Stan, and no realistic chance of uncovering any further affairs Gretchen might have had, I felt content, except for one lingering issue. I hadn't truly found a replacement for Gretchen. Despite dating quite a bit and having some casual encounters, none matched the fulfilling sexual experiences I'd shared with Gina or with Gretchen after I started spiking her sherry with Alpha. I also didn't experience the same level of intimacy that Gretchen and I had shared before I discovered her betrayals. Then, quite unexpectedly, something intriguing happened. While attending a local trade show, I noticed a woman in one of the booths who bore a striking resemblance to Gina Martinelli. As the day wound down, I approached her, saying, "I hope I'm not being rude, but you remind me of someone I once knew, Gina Martinelli." She did a double take. "That's my sister! Although she hasn't gone by Gina Martinelli for quite some time, she's Gina Aloto now." Loto. Wait, are you her younger sister who used to babysit for her during the summers before she met Vince Alato? She grinned. "It's me. Are you the tall Dutchman she lived with one summer? The one she always bragged about her wild exploits with?" I didn't know what bragging was before, but it certainly raised my morale, I replied with a smile. "I'm Dirk Vanvet. And you are?" "I'm Gabriella. I returned to Martinelli after the divorce 4 years ago," she said, beaming. Memories of my time with Gina flooded back, making me realize how much I had missed that connection. I fondly recall her sister, who bore a striking resemblance to her and was in high school back then. Gabriella must be around 46 or 47 now, but you'd never guess it. She looks no more than 35. It's hard to believe that I've been divorced for 3 years. How about dinner tomorrow night to catch up? I proposed, hoping to rekindle the connection we shared. Not today, she replied with a warm smile. But I'm local. I live in Arlington. Tomorrow night sounds good. I'll definitely be hungry by then. Gabriella possessed much of her sister's irresistible charm, though she seemed to carry it with a steadiness that made our conversations flow effortlessly. It felt refreshing. Since her children were not yet in college and she wasn't entangled in any romantic relationships at the moment, our time together felt uncomplicated and genuine. By the time we reached our 3rd date, I was resolved to become that romantic interest in her life. Our 4th date was a turning point. 2 days later, we found ourselves in bed together. Though our bodies at 50 and 47 might not have matched the vitality of our younger years, the connection we shared felt electrifying. Life was changing, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next.